The Nigerian army yesterday took responsibility for a series of bombings that pummeled villages in Kaduna, leaving scores of civilians dead as part of a protracted operation targeting armed bandits along the country's northwest flank. Now, many residents of Tundumbiri village in Igabi local government area were killed in the air raids, with several others injured in what the army chief said was an error. Now, according to the state government spokesman, Samuel Laruwan, a major general leading the Nigerian Army 1 Division headquartered in Kaduna, Valentine Okoro, had admitted at a meeting that the drone operators mistook the villagers for bandits who have been terrorizing the region. Now, those bombed had gathered for a Maulud celebration at about 9 p.m. on Sunday, during which the army said terrorists were also suspected to be moving across the borders between Zamfara and Kaduna. The airstrikes marked the first public knowledge about the Army's use of unmanned bombers outside the Nigerian Air Force. Now, the question many are asking is, how long has the Nigerian Army been using drones without the knowledge of the Nigerian Air Force, which it said did not conduct any operation in the affected area over the past 24 hours? We're joined this morning by security expert Onyekachi Adekoya, his managing director, PR24 risk management consultant, and he is also a fellow Nigerian Institute of Industrial Security. Thank you very much, and good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, just like we've said in the past hour here, this is not the first time. This is not even maybe the 10th incident where Nigerian civilians are bombed by the army. Unfortunately, we don't have any record that there's adequate punishment or adequate steps are taken to ensure it never happens again. Should we see this as, well, it happens. It's a mistake. It happens in the course of security operations, or is there some other way that this could be looked at?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's a very sad note. So our heart goes out to those who have been affected, their families and their loved ones. It's truly sad. But in international laws of war, the term collateral damage is actually codified in the law of war. But within the construct of that law, there are certain precautions that must be taken to ensure that civilian casualties are avoided. In some of the reports we have been putting out recently, we've also highlighted the fact that because of increased government security clearance operations in some of these areas like the Northwest, North Central,
yes,
there's a higher risk of collateral damage and civilian casualty. So some of us are beginning to also highlight to intended travelers within those areas that you're having a lot of these operations going on, and such things do occur in theaters as such as the Northwest or the Northeast. It's also not peculiar to Nigeria. I mean, if you look at the U.S. Army, for example, particularly when you look at the Vietcong Operation Rolling Thunder, over 864,000 tons of munitions were dropped on a particular space within Vietnam. It did also cause collateral damage. If you look at the Israeli campaign currently in Gaza, you can see the continuous reports of collateral damage. So it's sad, but it highlights a bigger problem with ISR, that's intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. If you are doing ISR, you also must have a way on site to spot. Certain armies will have spotters to also further validate what the drone operators are seeing from the sky. The problem with that Igabi axis is that it also borders Birin Gwari. There's been a number of bandits activities within the general area. The information that they had, or intelligence that they had to qualify that particular area as a credible place for attack, we do not have the set of considerations they were looking at. But clearly may suggest that there's further opportunity for improvement within the operations that we currently do. So if you have drone operators conducting ISR, sometimes it's also reconnaissance and attack. That's as you are surveying, you also have the capability to attack instantly. We must then be able to very carefully qualify the targets that we have on ground, just so that we also don't encounter civilian casualty. Some other times in laws of war, if you have like a major target, terrorist target, and there are one or two civilians, the West does it, Israelis do it. They also may qualify that it's good for them to take out that target, accept the collateral damage, then have a bigger impact on society. So sometimes these are military decisions that are not taken very lightly, and some of those decisions involving such instances has to go up to the commander-in-chief, and he must accept ultimate responsibility for the actions of the military. So we are not sure what the military was looking at, but it points at an area of improvement, just to be positive about, because a lot has to be done about the issues of insecurity. Nigeria is not getting safer, and most people don't know. There's some form of media, it's not a blockout, I must say, maybe also because that after some time, we become a bit numb to the issues, but a lot of people are being kidnapped, home adoptions, people adopting people on Okada, it's 100, it's 50. We
see a lot of that in the FCT as well now. There's a growing case of insecurity.
No, the FCT has always been insecure. It's just that now actions are being taken, it's coming to the fore. We have been at the forefront of complaining about the insecurity in the FCT. Now that we have an FCT minister who now wants to do something because of those increased interest and attention to what's happening in the FCT, you are now hearing about it, but some of us have been aware of the issues of insecurity in the FCT.
Okay, so are you saying, as a matter of fact, that this situation now is one that can be referred to or categorized in the category of collateral damage?
I think it was in 1995 that word collateral damage became what was classified as an unword of the year, because it seemingly trivializes civilian casualty. Sadly, that's how it is codified in international law of war, as collateral damage. And the qualification is that where the interest is genuine and the pursuit is in a pursuit of security of the state, if such a mistake occurs, it is classed as collateral damage.
At what point does it now become nonchalant? I'm sorry. So at what point does it then become nonchalant? Because, okay, I saw a report by Human Rights Watch between 2017 and now. We've had over 300 lives lost under the collateral damage, right? And that's, of course, not direct numbers. We're not quite sure what the exact numbers are. We saw this happen in January of this year. My colleague made reference to the RAND situation earlier, and that's, of course, a situation that till today we're not quite sure what was made of that, because there was an investigation, there was a panel that was set up to investigate into this, and we never heard of it. So at what point does it become nonchalant? Does it ever become nonchalant? And how can we test the genuineness of the cause? I mean, you're saying if there's a genuine intention, what's the measure, the litmus test for how genuine the cause is?
We now go back to the Leahy law that the Americans have, which is why they refuse to sell some of these weapon systems to us, because of their concern of concerns over human rights
abuse,
claims of human rights abuse, and the rest. It's a very big problem, and I know that the military high command they are also looking at it. But you also must know that there are a number of challenges. ISR is very complex. Sorry, I must say intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance is very complex. We don't know the capability of that drone system they have. If at all, my rough guess would be those systems are from Eastern Europe or from Turkey. Now, we don't know what has been bought and the range of operation, the ceiling of that system, and what the camera on it can do, and how you can properly qualify what's going on. Like I said, this particular case smacks of an intelligence failure. But is it an honest mistake? Is it malicious? That's where you now do like a proper investigation into what has happened. There must be two legs to validating information. So one, there's intelligence. Did somebody call out that strike? Somebody must have called out the strike, because we know that the DSS has operatives in every local government in Nigeria. You have the Directorate of Military Intelligence. In fact, you have the INT Corps, which has a Major General overseeing it. So what intelligence did they have, and who qualified it? Who called the strike? That investigation must go on. And under what circumstances did this error occur? Now, sometimes also understand that the way insurgents and armed bandits operate, they embed themselves within civilian centers. And it's in Nigeria that you hear that civilians pay Ansaru to protect them from bandits.
Yeah.
It's in Nigeria, you hear that bandits kidnap DPO, vigilante go and rescue DPO.
Yeah.
And so there are a number of contradictions in the country. So I can't sit down here and say at what point does it become this or that when I don't have all the facts.
Right.
A thorough investigation must go into what system was used, what's the capability of that system, what other support systems. For example, RSR is complex. There's satellite-based surveillance. There's Singate, so did they have signal intelligence? Was there any humans on ground, any human intelligence close to, was there a spotter? Did you have a laser designator? There are a number of things that goes into some of these kind of operations. And we know that it was then Chief of Army Staff Boratai that made a case for the Nigerian Army to have its own air component because of what you call CAS, close air support. Because we have had instances where we've lost senior officers, brigadier generals, colonel rednecks, in what you call fighting operations. So when the Army pulls out, they don't have close air support. It costs maybe what? At a range of $20,000 per Air Force sortie. The Air Force has its own budget. The Army doesn't control the budget for the Air Force, which is why we're seeing some frictions between the Air Force and the Army. And within the adjustments of modern day warfare and the adjustments within the theater of war, it makes sense to have an air component for the Army that has specific mission sets that are tailored to ground operations and also supporting ground operations. So I don't know so many things sitting here until we have the facts. We cannot say what has happened, but clearly there was a failure somewhere. It's a failure of intelligence that led to this mistake.
So this, might be a good time to also, from your, from the work that you do, to give us, maybe a picture of what the actual security situation is like in Nigeria. If we still have ISIS or ISIL, if we still have, Ansaru, we still have Boko Haram, we still have, these local governments and the likes, being swarmed or being run by these terror groups. But before you talk about that, I feel, and, I don't like the fact that we have trivialized these mistakes. Because if over time we've seen that there have been military hearings set up and people have been decommissioned, people have been fired, people have been sent to jail for these mistakes, then maybe we would find some confidence. Okay, maybe this one will be properly investigated and, somebody will be punished if they made a mistake with intelligence gathering. Because it's somebody's error that we're talking about here that has led to these loss of lives. Yeah. But we've trivialized it because we simply have taken hook, line, and sinker. The United States, it's collateral damage, to avoid them being punished for the things that they did in Vietnam, things that they did in Laos, the things that they did in Iraq, the things they've done all over the world. It's crazy how they are the ones with the moral compass on who they would give weapons to when they've killed more people, in these very, very, very crazy wars than any other country in the world. But they're the ones to tell you who they will give. So that irritates me already. But I want us to understand what's the picture of insecurity in Nigeria today.
I think you want to put me on the spot. The Inspector General may have to come and give you that picture of insecurity. Perhaps the Minister of Interior, maybe Mr. President. I would try not to answer that question. But as Portable will say, a problem.
No, but I want us to have, because why I'm asking this is because we moved from the good luck era where we're hearing about bombings every other day, right? We moved to the Buhari administration where it seems like the tactics change. We're no longer bombing, now we're attacking, But now we've moved to an era where we're not really sure if it's still the same way it used to be with local governments that have been run by these groups, or everybody's all calm and good, it's just little skirmishes here and there.
Yeah, so if you do like a tracking of crime stats and you look at regions that suffer the most or local government that has the most reported cases of armed attacks and armed invasions, you probably be looking at Askeroba, you can be looking at Konduga.
Yes.
Those are areas around the northeast. And yes, we still have ISWAP, which is ISIS in West African province, operating within the theater of the Lake Chad Basin. We still had AOG rivalry recorded around that area, which means that there are still skirmishes between ISWAP and Boko Haram elements within that area. The activities are increasing. Remember that we had this diplomatic spat with Niger, and Niger has seemingly pulled out from some corporations we've had. There's also instability in Niger going on currently.
It's not like we blame Niger for
That's neither here nor there, but that also increases the complexity on the ground.
Right.
So that's going on. You have the issues in the northwest. They are not letting up. Issues in Sokoto, Zamfara, Katsina, Kebbi, Kaduna, coming out to Niger, Nasarawa. We have had reports of ISWAP incursions into north central, pouring down towards the southwest around areas of Ondo. We've had issues with ESN, IPOB, you know, and within that southeast, there are a number of actors. There are non-state actors, as you like to call them. There are criminal elements. There are cult groups. There are local armed groups. It's almost a free-for-all.
Yeah.
You know, so in the southwest, even in some parts of Lagos, we are now, particularly around Okota, there are reports of cases of kidnapping of major business people going on. So when the big men in Abuja say that security is improving, I don't think very sincerely that they have a full grasp of the issues. I think that they are ill-advised.
Yep.
They are listening to people who are telling them what they think they want to hear. But very honestly, we are very unserious with security in Nigeria. As long as we continue to think that one man can sit in Abuja and 100% police the 774 local governments we have in Nigeria across over 900 and maybe average 930,000 square kilometers of landmass that we have, policing over 250 ethnic groups. Whoever thinks that needs to check into Yaba somewhere on the left. I think that we're making very dangerous assumptions. And I always say this, we will come, unfortunately, this will not be the last time that there will be an issue like this, sadly. Lives will be lost today, tomorrow, till the end of this year. We have almost now normalized our state of trauma. So we're grossly traumatized people. And you listen to the Chief of Army Staff, the IGP, at the Senate hearing. I think there was a joint session also, and everybody was clamoring for more money. No, you don't need. They don't need more money.
In fact, I watched an interview with a sister station where an expert had argued that the budget that is allocated to defense gets the highest on the budget.
3.something trillion.
Yes, 3.25 trillion.
Yes.
Right, and the argument was that the defense budget should be cut and split to other sectors like education and health.
No, there's an argument to make there, because in 2019 we adjusted our national security strategy and said that we wanted to do more on the issues of human security, which means that we will shift away from regime protection to human security. Now, the elements that you need to put in place to ensure human security are issues of education, social well-being, social infrastructure. That's everything that ensures that the contract between the governors, those who govern us and the governed, is fully in place. And then once you have some of these things, people can aspire to become better citizens. And then that will reduce the pressures that lead to insecurity. But the macroeconomic situation is such that the economy is almost in tatters. You now see the president is for no, I don't blame the president for going to COP28 with 1,000. He has to do that.
Now 422 people.
Yeah, 422 people, yeah. He has to do that. Because now, in international diplomacy, this is what is called commercial diplomacy. He has to be out there marketing Nigeria. I listened to, I think it was Senator Smart or so, who was making a case. If you look at your expenditure side, you look at your revenue side. What are you spending to get what? You have to be out there now. For the past 8 years, for the past 8 years, we had a president who did not understand the language of business, who didn't understand the way macroeconomic works and how the body language of the president can signal to foreign investors that Nigeria is open for business. This president now has to do that. The point I want to make is that the president now has a major macroeconomic headache that he has to resolve. now troubled. Nigeria, like I say, is like a man who has over 37 wives and doesn't have the resources to take care of the 37 wives. So you have the 37 wives fighting amongst themselves, and the man still has to put food on the table. So the president has that headache. You then layer on it insecurity. You see why the problem will not go away tomorrow. Because security costs money, yes.
Yeah.
But you must structure security correctly. The way security is structured now, we have removed the local government chairman from the issue of security. We have removed the state governors from the issue of security. And everybody is assuming that somebody somewhere in Abuja has a magic wand that will wave over Nigerian security and solve the problem. That would not work.
So the moral of the story is that we haven't changed our approach, towards, insecurity.
That's why you've mentioned from Jonathan to Buhari to now, the issues are fundamental. They are structural. And until you change the structural problem, the narrative will not change.
That's
so what steps we need to take to change the structural problems?
I'm sounding like a broken record now on national TV most times. Without state police, I'm sorry, we are just all fooling ourselves. Because now, the citizens can hold the governor responsible for...
Because he's not in charge.
And in fact, one joked and said he was resigning as CSO of the state. It was then Governor Yari of Zamfara who said he's no longer CSO. Because the way we are is warped. The states can make laws, the states can adjudicate laws, the states cannot enforce laws. So if you ask the governor, he does his hand like this. But if they need to mobilize the state to win an election, they can. But they cannot mobilize the state for... Look at what Governor Zulum is doing in Borno State. Borno State.
Yeah.
You can see a governor who is interested, but the issues are somewhat beyond him. When the then administration of President Buhari moved to rework the laws of the police to ensure that states now had state police, the State House of Assembly returned and rejected that proposal. Why? I'm sure they were under instruction of their governor because it was a budgetary issue.
Yeah.
Now we have removed fuel subsidy, and now there is increased spend. How can you say you take the security and safety of your citizens as priority, but you are not willing to have state police? And then we think that it's Abuja that doesn't want to give them the pass. It is the state governors.
There's something that I brought up a few weeks ago, that I thought was, we've largely ignored, because from our conversations now, this is going to, once again be swept under the rug. There will be no military hearing, nobody will be punished, we'll move on. Until next time it happens, and we'll invite you again, as always, to have these conversations. But I wanna ask about...
Let's pray it doesn't happen again.
Yes, let's hope it doesn't.
Okay, all right. But I wanna ask about, for those who have been victims of this system, for those who have been victims of these failures of the Nigerian system, to protect them, these 80 people who have lost their lives, it's 80 families who are going to be mourning. Can you paint a picture of what the emotional state is like for people who live in those regions, who have suffered loss for the last decade? Loss of villages, loss of relatives, loss of family members, and the country just moves on.
I can't paint that picture, very honestly. I can only attempt to maybe suppose that I know what they go through. But I'll tell you what, the Nigerian spirit is very strong in those communities. Life goes on. And sometimes these people, not just loss of life, most of them are farmers. They've resolved to fate. And, religion plays a very strong role in some of those places where people believe ultimately that whatever happens to one is the will of God. And since none of us can question God, people just accept and move on. That is how destiny has chosen their path to be. So in that same spirit, they are quite happy to pay the bandits to have access to their farms. Where they don't pay, we've had cases of those bandits raising up, burning down the farms. What would you do? You have Ansaro offering you protection for which you pay tax. For local governments, where sometimes the local government chairmen are in the state capital, there's no sense of governance. You ask them, and in some of these places, they don't even know how to recite the Nigerian anthem. Nothing concerns them about the Nigerian pledge. People are just basic human beings trying to fend for themselves. So it's a problem of leadership, really. It's a problem of the distance between the political class and the real people on the ground to understand what the problems are. Maybe when one or two senators or reps are kidnapped, we'll down here national TV.
Oh yeah,
people will be
it's already
summoned,
started. I mean,
you know, but most of them can't go back to their villages. Some of them can't go back to their communities. And I don't blame the politicians, really. Maybe I blame the National Orientation Agency. Maybe I blame the Office of National Security Advisor. Maybe I blame the president himself, because how do you put elected officials into office who will make laws that will improve security that don't know anything about security? Maybe we need to begin to have a session for them on security. And maybe they should stop listening to the, what do you call them now, the staffers of government who reel them. Call independent assessors. What most companies do now is, beyond your in-house security structure, you call independent assessors to come and give you an independent eye view of the adequacy of your system.
At least with that one, you're sure that you're not getting
it's
any
not colored,
bias.
it's not biased, it's not, you know, so we can pay the accounting majors for that.
Unfortunately, Mr. Adekoya, we've run out of time. We have to wrap up the show. But in one word, from what you know of Nigeria's security infrastructure and Nigeria's security architecture, do you see any investigation happening?
It's not about investigation in this case, in one word. We must not scapegoat anybody. Honest mistakes happen. I support very strongly the military, okay? And the truth is, we don't have time. We can talk about insecurity for 24 hours. Our national defense is skewed because everything we need, we must import from outside. We are not developing these weapon systems internally. That's a bigger problem.
This conversation, we really need to have you back, because there are several layers that we cannot touch today, unfortunately. Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you again.
No problem.
Hopefully on better terms. All right.